Oh, hey.
Welcome to Chronicles of the Phoenix. Today, we're coming to you from a new place.
Woo!
My house. Thought we'd change it up. Hopefully it sounds the same.
Maybe you'll get to hear Ted.
Why'd you say his name?
Oh, am I supposed to say his name?
Look at him. Now he's interested.
Oh, no.
He's going to start making noise.
He's not, though. He's a good boy.
Okay. That's my dog, in case you didn't know. Today, we're going to be talking about limiting beliefs, early experiences, and reclaiming your inner knowing. We're going to talk about how early experiences, especially the ones that we might barely remember, create limiting beliefs about ourselves and how powerful systems benefit when we stay disconnected from our inner knowing. Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff. So when we think about this topic, what we're really thinking about, and a good question for everybody listening, is what if the story you believe about yourself didn't come from you?
Yeah,
Might not be yours.
that's true.
Yeah. So in a little bit, I'm going to read an excerpt from a book, and that will ground us in the topic a little bit. But our goal today is to help listeners see how their history, environment, and external influences shape their self-beliefs and how integration, awareness, and small challenges can reshape those beliefs.
Yeah. And, where do these come from,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've been talking about limiting beliefs for years. I remember we had an exercise that we did years and years ago.
At least 10 years.
At least 10 years with a clinician we used to work with who brought it in. And they're often brought to us before we're even old enough to understand or challenge them. And one kind of cliche that we talk about in the biz is if it's hysterical, it's historical.
What does that mean?
Meaning that if it activates you and brings up a lot of emotions or anger, or, if it really hits you in some sort of big way, it probably comes from a historical context in your childhood.
Okay, yeah. So it's so deep and in the background that it's what's bringing up this level of intensity in the emotion.
Yep. And oftentimes it's subconscious,
Mhm.
And another thing that we talk about a lot is you have to name it to tame it. And
Mhm.
so if there's a lack of awareness, it's going to keep happening over and over again, which we've talked a lot about that, right? Which is that there aren't conscious choices. There's learned meanings that our nervous systems took in,
Mhm.
and they became truths because they were never examined.
Okay. It sounds to me like so much of this is almost a product of time in our lives where you don't even have the awareness that that's actually what's forming until later on when you look at it.
Right.
And you're able to kind of take a look back at where things have come from and why we do what we do and what makes us tick. But a piece of that beyond what we've already talked about with personality types and that kind of stuff are these core beliefs that we might have held on to for so long that we learn came from somewhere.
And it's something that I talk about a lot is that that's why it's important to examine where you've come from, and not from a place of judgment of your family of origin or anything like that, but just from a place of recognizing that everybody did the best that they could with the information and experiences that they had at that time.
Yep.
And there were mistakes made. In the same way that I'm making mistakes with my kids at this point. And
we all do it.
But if I can take the time to understand the impact of some of the things that didn't serve me and learn from them, I can heal and then become the best version of myself today.
Yes. I think that dovetails beautifully with when you brought this topic to me, because it was something that you were recently moved to think about. It aligned perfectly with this experience I was having. I'm reading this book, and I had just gone to a talk with Jen Hatmaker. So if anyone knows who she is, then you know how she's a wonderful writer, and she does a lot. But the talk that she was there to present on was around her new book called Awake. And it's a memoir, so it's different than some of her other books. And she's really deep dives into it's a weaving of stories about her life, but the primary focus is talking about her and her husband getting divorced and those things, something she's never really talked as openly about in terms of what happened. And What I was surprised about in the book to find is that she weaves together so many stories from her life at different points in time, kind of jumping back and forth, and just so clearly starts to outline some of the things that she realized shaped who she was as a wife, who she was as a woman, and just beautifully highlights these limiting beliefs that she ended up having in her life and where they came from for her. So I thought I would read just a quick 2-page part of the book and let people hear about it.
Yes.
So this chapter is called Mrs. Landerson, and Jen says, I'm a 6th grader. The worst time to be a human person in the span of a life. My body is hopeless. I cannot crack the hair code. My mom won't let me pierce my ears. Everything feels rigged. I want to speak the language of the popular, but I'm too awkward, too cerebral. I don't understand their dialect. I am stunned at my classmates' natural charm. Notably, I study the way Laura Morgan walks and practice it in my full-length mirror. It involves curling your right fingers gently into your palm and slightly bending back your wrist. I don't understand this particular mannerism, but its effect on me is undeniable. Plus, Laura is Catholic, which adds to her mystique. Her whole walking operation involves a casual gait, while the posed right hand does a very specific sashay. It is a complicated endeavor, and I work on it, essentially around the clock. Every Monday morning, I decide to debut my new walk at Mulberry School, but I lose my nerve on the bus. Through some twist of luck, this is the year I discover I'm a little funny. Humor is my dad's native tongue, so I guess I absorbed it by proximity. This small emerging superpower is all I have. Style, money, looks, charisma, none, 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 none. I can't do Laura's walk. We don't have cable, so I don't know the right shows. Mom refuses to buy me Guess jeans. My plastic glasses are a genuine tragedy. I have no other assets, but I learned to inject witty responses into the 6th grade zeitgeist, and shockingly, astonishingly, the other kids laugh. Unfamiliar with the concept of restraint, I put my new currency into high rotation. I stay hypervigilant for opportunities to demonstrate my comedy prowess. I find the middle of class an optimal time. I'm hoping to impress Mrs. Landerson, too. All I have ever been is smart and quiet. Being funny is fun. I haven't had many friends, really, well, ever. The approval of my classmates is a stunning turn of events. My social anxiety begins fraying at the edges. A minuscule kernel of confidence takes root. My parents notice the change. They tell me later they are relieved. They'd wiped my many, many tears of loneliness, and I'm at recess when a group of cute girls walks towards me in tandem. Jennifer, you'll never believe what Mrs. Landerson just said to us. I mine my brain for a sharp witticism. A teacher deep cut always plays well. She pulled us all together in the hallway and asked why we even wanted to be friends with you. She said you were, what was the word she used, you guys? Domineering. She kept going on and on. She was really mean about it. I am paralyzed. I stand there mute. My system is overloaded with shock. Mrs. Landerson thinks badly of me? She finds me domineering? She doesn't know why anyone likes me? She's talking ugly about me to my new friends? I cannot get any of it to make sense. In 8 seconds, I am handed a new story about myself, a thought I had never considered once. I am too much. I ache with humiliation and sorrow. For a few seconds, I try to pretend this doesn't bother me, but I start sobbing and run to the nurse's office. I lay on the sick cot, cover my head with a blanket. I'm inconsolable. She asks to call my parents. I'm 11.
That is so powerful. When you first sent that to me, first of all, her descriptive writing is so incredible. I feel like I was there.
Yep.
And I can think of different times in my life where similar things have happened that you don't know at the time how deep they hit, but they end up ingraining a belief in you that takes root. And then that becomes reinforced by other incidents that tack on.
Yep.
And I would wonder if, Jen, and you could answer this maybe from the talk, if that was something that she even thought about for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it was something that she didn't really even think about again and how it impacted her life and her belief system about herself until years later when she started doing her own work.
Yeah. I haven't finished the book yet, so I'm sort of curious how it all comes together. I'm on like the last section. There's 3 main sections. But from my perspective, it doesn't seem like these were things she thought about until after her divorce, and that this kind of prompted this journey for her to really discover herself and rediscover herself and understand herself as this new person. She references a lot that she was married at 19 and she had an abrupt end to her marriage of 26 years. And so she had literally never been on her own ever. And so the way the book sets it up, a lot of this journey is her entering therapy after and then really discovering these things. And so it felt a bit like she kind of could go back in time and identify these moments and then wrote about them in this book because they sort of set the stage for how she learned to understand herself as her new self.
One thing that's interesting as you're saying that comes up for me is that sometimes I hear from people that they're not sure therapy will work for them because they don't remember the past, which is a common phenomenon, I think, with trauma, is that our brains are super protective and will compartmentalize. That's an adaptation that a lot of people have. But through healing work, once you start to make meaning of things and start to understand these beliefs and these target events that happened, some of your memories do start coming back.
Right.
You can make memories of them and develop new beliefs about yourself and that experience that transforms.
Exactly. And I hear that a lot too. I have, many conversations with people who, either don't remember or sometimes think like, well, I don't have as many issues as this person, or like, I never really wanted to try therapy because I know when people have a trauma that they can really clearly name and talk about, that it makes sense that they need support with that. But if I can't even identify what my thing is, almost like what do I need help with other than how I'm showing up right now? And so much of that work has to be looking back at these things did form beliefs in you and a construct for you in terms of how you operate in this world. As kids, we're often going to do what we need to do to protect ourselves, to keep ourselves safe, to understand the world. And in this case, even thinking of what Jen wrote, the power that adults have in your life, your teachers, right? You put so much on them in a way because it's such an important relationship to you. And so then these events, when they happen, they take hold and they are very, very powerful. But like you said, oftentimes I think out of the gate, this was not a story. It sounded like she just could recall and go, oh, this is when this happened. It was like she had to do some digging and figure this out. Where did this thought of I am too much actually come from?
Right. And, we know that early attachments, which is exactly what you're talking about, early attachment experiences form implicit beliefs about worth, capability, and belonging. And those memory networks store emotional meanings, not just facts. So that's why it's not as important to remember the specific memories or the facts, because it's about understanding those core beliefs that got rooted at the time.
Right. Yeah. And so while we're talking a lot about thoughts, the other thing that's interesting about this is how while the thoughts exist in our mind, our bodies are also holding these narratives, right? So even if we don't have memories or even if we don't have a connective thought we can come up with right away to connect us in with what's happening to us, our bodies are going to be telling us when we're triggered, when something's wrong, that this is in there, right? And so it's the concept of the book, The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk. Sometimes we have things happening to us physically or we notice changes that are happening in our body, whether it's our heart starts racing, like we don't understand why this is happening at this moment, or a time of year comes around and every year I start struggling to sleep and I don't know why that's happening to me. And a lot of the time it could be a triggering time of year from our past that our body literally remembers and just goes into a bit of like fight, flight, freeze and starts responding.
Yeah, I mean, I know starting in February as March is when most of my traumas have happened for me. And so starting in February, I noticed that I really start to get more activated and I start to have funky dreams. I start to get a little bit more irritable. My anxiety goes up. And I have to be definitely aware of that. And my body just knows. I am aware of it, but my body just automatically starts reacting as soon as the month gets closer to March.
Right. And I think from what you've talked about and shared already, because you are a thinker and a fast thinker, right? Like, one of the interesting things about this is our minds could be telling us, like, I could do this. I'm powering through. Like, this year it's going to be different. I'm feeling better. Whatever it could, I don't want to put those words in your mouth, but the thing that's interesting is that your body could still be holding those earlier experiences and telling you it's not safe, or getting into this time of year isn't something I can manage this year, and that's what our body's responding to, even when our thoughts start to change.
Oh, no, I try to will things all the time.
Yes.
But my body's like, no. I mean, and there's times where, where I'm sure everybody's had that reaction where you're physically like, I need to go there. I'm supposed to go there. And your body and everything in you is like, I can't make myself do it.
Yes.
There's something that's telling me in me that's like, no. Or, when you have that deja vu experience and you're like, I don't know, I feel like I've been here before.
Yeah.
Or people that have had a traumatic medical experience and had to be in an ambulance, and then every time they see an ambulance go by, they get activated.
Mm-hmm.
That's a body response.
Absolutely. And so the key here to having both of these things happening at the same time is what you do with that is you work on integration, right? So we work to integrate and update the old story that we're telling ourselves. And so what integration means is it's bringing up the story experience, how it felt, and putting it together with our new truth. Because a lot of the work we do with folks in therapy is taking that old story and then, which could be saying, I can't do this. I'm not capable of managing. I can't get through this experience, and creating a new story, right? So for Jen in that example, like, I'm too much. And my guess is that she carried that with her for a very long time. And so using that example, a way to integrate would be to bring up that experience that she wrote about in detail, much like she did in writing it, feel how she felt, and pair that up with a new truth. And so an example of that could be that was true then, but it doesn't have to be true now.
I also think another piece of that is recognizing what your truth is today, and examples of I am exactly who I am exactly enough, or
Yes.
whatever the new belief is. And all of the times that Jen showed up as this extroverted, beautiful, like, larger than life person that she is, and received incredible positive feedback.
Yeah.
As validation for that new belief.
Mm-hmm. Because
that could integrate into the old.
Exactly. And she's a natural leader. She did an amazing job in this room with all these women talking about this just effortlessly. And it's because you can see it's her comfort. It's where she shines. And yeah, you could see that she's really found a new way to have a new story that goes with this experience.
So for you, what's the difference between cognitive insight and embodied knowing?
Cognitive insight is knowing in your head that, oh, that's where that came from, right? It's almost like the memory when she describes this story and having the aha moment of, that was the first time I felt like I was too much. That to me is cognitive insight. You start to remember, you're like, okay, that's where that started. To me, the embodied knowing is when that experience is integrated so fully that our body stops responding in the same way, even though it knows the new thing. It doesn't mean it goes away forever, like having a reaction to something. And, in her case, she might always respond to a trigger of feeling like she's too much and have to catch herself. But the embodied knowing is when there is a connection between what your head knows and what your body knows. And so therefore, they respond in sync together. If your body does start to react, your head can recognize that and bring in a coping skill that we've learned, like understand what's happening. And so I view it as the two, like, working together as a system. The main takeaways from what we're talking about with integration are that memories are not fixed. They can be changed when we reactivate them. We're not going to be stuck with the same narrative forever. We absolutely can make change once we dig back into how that felt. And when a memory is recalled, the brain opens a window where Old emotional associations, limiting beliefs, and our body responses can be reorganized or updated. If new, contradictory, or more accurate information is introduced during this window, then the memory reconsolidates it and it gives it a new meaning. And so basically, we challenge that thinking. We challenge the belief. We give ourselves examples, just like you said with Jen, challenging this limiting belief that she's too much and looking at all the positives that have come from how she shows up. And we can then shift our whole understanding of that construct. It reorganizes in our brain. And so that's why insight and emotional experience can permanently shift a belief about ourselves.
Exactly. So why are we talking about this, right? Like, why is this important? And, we've said before that intuition is your quiet, steady knowing. And when it goes offline, family scripts, religious rules, cultural norms, government messages, and other powerful systems reward compliance and self-doubt. Disconnection is functional to systems, even when it harms people. So we're talking about this because it is so important to tap in so that you can protect yourself and protect those around you. And it feels more important than ever right now to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole process happening isn't something that is just ironic that we all do it. It's actually created for people in a lot of systems. There's a lot of ways in which people in power stay in power because the system is created so that these limiting beliefs exist for other people and so that we have to disconnect our head and our heart or our mind and our body. When those things are not integrated, you gain a bit of control in a way.
Yeah. External systems such as religion, government, schools, productivity, culture, families benefit when we defer to authority over intuition. And messages like goodness equals obedience, safety equals silence, or value equals performance train us to override our body cues and intuition. And that the result of that is limiting beliefs that feel moral or factual and inherited from the systems around us.
Right. These things are so ingrained in us in a way that you don't even really see because you're in it, right? It's kind of like people talking about being in the ocean and like knowing you're in water. Like you don't know when you're infused into a system. Sometimes you can't always see the dynamics that are at play and what's happening because it just becomes so normal.
One thing that I think about and I've thought about through the years is I got married very young. And I grew up in a very traditional family. And my parents got married very young. My in-laws got married very young and had their kids very young. And I was the oldest daughter, very much wanted to make my parents proud, please them. Education was very important to me. And so I was very committed to finishing my degree and doing all of that before I had kids. And my husband was in the Navy, so we moved away. I've always thought that if we had stayed home and lived near our families and been in that environment, I think I would have recreated my family history and not evolved into who I am today. Because by moving away and really having the opportunity to individuate, we had 11 years before we had kids. So we had a lot of time. I got my undergraduate, my master's degree. I had a lot of time to grow up, to do a lot of self-reflection and really determine. And we had so many conversations about who we would be as parents and how we would do it differently and stuff. And we said a lot of things that were not even true. Like, it's just like that humbling thing of like, then when you're in it, it's like, yeah, that's not real. But, but it gave the maturity and space and time gave me the opportunity to reflect and recognize the things that served me in my childhood and prune, so to speak, the things that didn't, and find my own path.
Right. So you left the system you were in that way by physically removing yourselves and going into a new space, which made sense for what was happening in your lives at the time. It did. It took you right out of the environment. And so you were able to develop your own ways of doing things, examine the historical things, look at the relationships, see what you wanted to try to do differently. When we're in that, it can be a lot harder to see them.
Right. And I think my siblings, we all grew up thinking that we wanted to repeat history, that, you know, we wanted the similar things that we grew up with. And then recognize that there were actually things that we wanted to do differently, actually, in hindsight. But I think that in the environment, if I had stayed in that environment, it would have been very challenging to have the perspective that I needed. And honestly, the degree that I chose required me to do the reflective work that I needed to do to gain the access to find those beliefs that weren't serving me so that I could name it to tame it, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great example.
Who benefits when you doubt yourself?
I think that's a very interesting question, right? Like, I often think of this question in terms of how to, especially right now, I'm always trying to figure out, like, where does this come from when things are happening in our country? And, like, who is benefiting from this right now? Where, follow the money. You know, people say those things, and I think of it in a similar vein of, like, who's winning by this happening? Who's benefiting? And so, to me, when there's a system that's creating doubt in you, the system is the thing that benefits. You start to question yourself, right? And that could be any situation. Jen talks a lot in her book about her religious background, and she had left her church to form another church herself because she started not having the same types of beliefs that she was raised in. And in that initial system she was raised in, that's where she connected a lot of this back to these beliefs that you're not supposed to trust yourself, that you put all your faith in God, you trust in God. And I think that's a value a lot of people hold. But in her particular church at the time, it was taught to them to ignore your own intuition, and essentially whatever you're thinking you should be doing the opposite. And that was mostly taught to girls in that group, which was fascinating too. So again, that's an example of, if we look at why, like, what would they benefit from? It maintains the structure of power in a system. Yeah,
that makes sense.
So one of the things I was just thinking your story that you just shared highlights so well is how, right, like you said, leaving the system allowed you to take on this new way of being, kind of create that for yourself. And I think that's a lot of why people struggle to change the beliefs that they have, because when we stay in the system, the limiting beliefs almost prevent us from leaning into doing new things. And so you had this great way of, I'm out of the system, I've moved into this new space, and I can then access sort of this new way and challenge myself to lean into something new. And so when we're faced with doing something new or leaning into something challenging, in those moments, we're most likely to have our older narratives activated first, right? So that thoughts like, I'm not capable, I'll fail, I'm too much, I'm not allowed, right? These old narratives kind of pop up because the challenge is uncomfortable, because we're faced with something new. And so if we then just back off and avoid the new thing, that's what keeps those beliefs true, right? We're actually acting in alignment with that belief instead of a new belief. We're going towards, like, yeah, I'm not capable, I'm not going to go for that thing, I won't take that risk. And you could have lived into that and not moved, or decided, right, like, this is going to be way too hard for us, we're young, like, how can we do this? Let's just not do anything different, and then repeat history. But you had to actually challenge whatever your narratives were at that time to say, like, no, we're totally capable of doing a new thing and just going off on our own.
Yeah. And I mean, at the time, I was barely 20. So I don't even know that none of it was a conscious decision. I think now, hindsight 2020, I definitely, there's so many things at that time. I was naive and certainly didn't have a fully developed brain. And I think about like some of the impulsive 7 in me decisions that I made. But yeah, I mean, there was a ton of fear. And some of the drivers, I think at the time, were fear of failure and the failure of, well, I've made the decision to jump and I don't even think it's the right decision anymore, but I don't want to risk judgment by not. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you just barrel through and then you like figure out the consequences after and hope it works out.
But I think we are speaking to something interesting that is true because, again, what we know is that avoidance is the thing that reinforces our fear. And so there is a piece of just jumping and doing something and taking action that is what shifts our thinking. Like the act of doing that shifts thinking. And so I think there's a way in which, like, yeah, we can reflect back and kind of see and all have things that we're like, oh, now I can kind of either make sense of how this worked for me or, oh my God, why did I do that? You know, but sometimes in order to get that integration mind body going, like a piece of it is actually just taking action and doing something different before you even think about it.
Yeah. Like, you know, when the Army recruiter calls you and you're like, yeah, I don't really want to pay for college. So sure, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Why not?
Just do it.
Let's just join the Army. Freak your dad out. Perfect. Just go Navy.
It sounded like a perfect choice.
This sounded like a great choice. So, yeah.
It worked out.
I mean, in hindsight, it worked out.
Could have flopped, but it didn't.
It could have flopped, but, you know, it didn't.
It didn't.
I think about our journey a lot. And now at this age, in contrast to my younger self and the decisions and how I made them and the ways that I'm looking at the beliefs that I have now and the way that I'm unpacking through this year of revitalization and really intentionally trying to jump in feet first to new things that are scary and things that I've tried to avoid. And one of the things is, you know, how does staying small feel safer even when it's painful? You know, what does that mean to you when you hear that?
I think it's that comfort that you feel in the norm of what you've experienced most. So if staying small, not taking risk, not pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone is what you're used to in a way, and certainly for me, that's me, it still feels safer to do that even when the thing that we're, quote, comfortable with is uncomfortable for us because we know it's not really aligned for us anymore. But the thought of pushing back against it is scary. And all of these examples we're giving of systems that are created to keep things the way that they are, challenging that and stepping outside of it, even once you start to know that it's going to be better for you to do that, is still a hard choice to make and is still scary. And so sometimes we stay in it, even when it's hurting us and we know it hurts us, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think it's something that I've thought a lot about. And I think that you have too, of my journey over the last couple of years. And finally making the choice to bet on myself, as we've talked about a lot, and do this work and feeling so much more aligned with who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes.
For the first time in a really long time, you know, and I felt proud of what I was doing before. I believed in the mission and I worked so hard at my last job and I was passionate about it, but it didn't feel like this. This feels right. This feels like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. My last job never felt like this, ever. It always felt like there was something else. There was something, you know, and maybe at some point it did, but like, it didn't feel like this. You know, I know I'm where I'm supposed to be now. I'm aligned.
Yeah.
It's a different feeling.
I could totally see that. And I think it's something we feel, but it's also something we can see in ourselves and see in other people. And I think while there was safety and comfort sticking with the same plan, as long as both of us did over time, so much of what we've talked about is not only what we're doing now feeling so aligned, but it pulling together the other pieces of what's important in our values in our life, because we have time for that. We can dedicate energy to our families, and this allows us flexibility and control over our schedules. You know, so all of those things coming together, I think, are things that, for me at least, I used to say were what I had in a way. I actually always talked about like, oh, I have flexibility in my job. It's so great. Because to a degree that was true. Like I didn't ever have to worry about taking time off to go to something for my son at school. Like I was able to do it. But the job was so big and so taxing that there was also a struggle to actually disconnect and do that. Like it always felt like you were on in some way from my perspective. So to be able to take the leap into something that was so scary to do, but then feels ultimately like it was absolutely the right thing because these areas of our lives that we wanted to pour into, we're actually able to do now.
Totally. And I'll share a little bit of a personal story that just happened related to limiting beliefs is over the last, I don't know, probably forever, I've felt some level of inadequacy in my abilities to just be able to achieve what I want to achieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this to you, like I felt like to some extent you had become a little bit of a security blanket for me.
Okay.
I feel very safe with you. We're great trainers together. Like, we had a lot of feedback about our vibe is really great, easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but I've always wanted to go to EMDR training.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, hey, Cor, we've got this training. We should go. And you're like, yeah, it doesn't work for me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway.
Yep.
And it's in New Jersey and it's a good amount of money, but I'm going to pay for it because it's important to me and I'm going to do it. And it sounds like not a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like for me, it was a big deal to like pay for this out of my own pocket and go to New Jersey to this training by myself and like,
yeah.
Which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it felt to me like it was a step in integrating and taking action to like move forward.
Yes.
The call to action of I can do this and I can do this on my own. I don't need my security blanket anymore.
Oh, man. I think we both experienced that. And it's so interesting to me that you're talking about it like that, because I do find that I've been trying to challenge myself in different ways to be totally comfortable like doing things by myself. And even the Jen Hatmaker event I talked to you about, like getting to do that, like I had been on a wait list for the event and they called me the day before saying a ticket opened up. It's one ticket though. So I had to go by myself. And I was like, I'm definitely, like, I really wanted to. And so I was like, I'll just go by myself. But I never do stuff like that. Like, I truly always have a buddy. I probably would have, if it wasn't for my engage word of the year, truly would have just been like, okay, like, if I can't bring someone, I'll skip it. I'll read about it later. And that's a small thing, but it's exactly like you're saying. When you take action, pushing back against the thing that whatever the limiting belief is, if it's like, I'm not worth this or I'm not capable of this, you really put this investment into yourself by going to that training, giving yourself this new skill, like enhancing your career and what you're doing on your own, which is so different than probably something you've ever done.
Well, and it was so rewarding. The training was incredible. I learned so much. I met great people. It was personally transformative for me. And it's different periods in time. I remember the first time that I went to the movies by myself. So our call to action in this conversation and in this work is like the integration helps you reconnect with your mind, body, and intuition so that you can actually move towards the life you want. And that's, I think, my point and your point is that that's what we're getting to. And it's worth it. We could tell you from personal experience. Healing is not only about insight, it's about taking action that contradicts the old story. Once you start noticing the belief that held you back, you have a responsibility to yourself to step into the version of you that's been waiting. And you're going to love to meet that person. I love that.
That's beautiful.
And this one's really important too. Relationships matter. Safe people help regulate, support risk, reflect truth, and witness growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
All really important. Yeah. So then our challenge for everybody in that is to identify a belief that you have. And once you understand what that is and you look at the origin of it, what's the next step? You're going to take a step towards the thing you've been avoiding. So you have to show up, join the group, apply for the job, have a difficult conversation, say yes or say no, whatever is the opposite of what you've been doing, and just lean into knowing that you're ready to make that change.
So, our takeaways for today are: your limiting beliefs were formed by early experiences, and many were never yours to begin with. And powerful systems often depend on you doubting yourself. Integration restores your inner knowing, reconnecting mind and body. Small changes reshape identity and dismantle old narratives. And you yourself can rewrite beliefs through awareness, support, and action.
Yes.
So go forth and meet the new version of yourself.
Do it. Have a great week.
Have a great 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.